My friends, I hope you can all hear me. I'll try and shout as we're socially distanced to the far corners of this little park. As we stand here in front of the FIPO Memorial, it's perhaps fitting that we look back in this year, extraordinary year, an unsettling year that we're all experiencing, perhaps the most unsettling year we've experienced in our lifetimes. We look back at some of the anniversaries that are commemorated with this year. Perhaps starting with the Far East prisoners of war who came back to Southampton in their thousands from Far East prison camps this time of the year, 75 years ago, one of which was Eric Davis, the Royal Signals, who was captured at the fall of Singapore, spent time in Changi, and then was transported on one of the hell ships, in the hold of one of the hell ships, to northern Japan, where he worked as a slave labourer in the coal mines for 3 years, and came back to Southampton 3 days ago, 75 years ago, on November the 5th, on the Queen Elizabeth, and 75 years ago today, he would have been back home in Shrewsbury. And that story comes to me from his daughter, who asked to be remembered for him today. Of Dunkirk, 338,000 Allied troops were evacuated off the beaches of Dunkirk by this armada of small ships. Then, later on, there was the Battle of Britain, which was one of the turning points of the Second World War. My own father had some connection with the Battle of Britain, and I proudly wear his RAF scarf today, which is at least 80 years old, and he would have worn about the time of the Battle of Britain. He was a combat pilot in the Royal Flying Corps in the First World War, aged 18, and was shot down behind enemy lines in northern France and spent the last months of the war as a guest of the Germans in a field hospital. And in the Second World War, he was too old to be a combat pilot, but he did train the young men who went on to fight in the Battle of Britain. And we need pause to consider that many of these young men were teenagers. They had scarcely 2 weeks training before they were thrust into combat over southeast England, and their life expectancy was little more than 6 weeks. And it's a bit of a daunting thought that a lot of these kids were 19, 20, 21 years old when they fought and lost their lives. And then later on in November, exactly this time 80 years ago, Southampton was blitzed. And where we are standing now, of course, was little slum houses with very narrow streets, completely obliterated in November 1940. And unwittingly, of course, the Luftwaffe laid the foundations for this little park today, which we all cherish. Going back a bit further to the First World War, 100 years ago next week, that soldier was taken from an unknown battlefield in northern France, where he died, brought back to Westminster and buried with full military honours. And of course, Remembrance Day goes back really to the First World War, and that almost senseless killing of young men on both sides of combatants really hardly knew what they were fighting for, but gave their lives willingly for what they believed in. And so I would like to just leave you with this poem from the First World War, written by a Canadian military doctor. In Flanders fields the poppies grow, among the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amidst the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunsets glow, love, and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. If you break faith with us who died, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.